I would love to introduce Mrs. Mcfarquar, who's going to go through all about Windrush. And if you have any questions, there should be time at the end. And we've got loads of posters here that you can find out way more about her as well. And just so you all know, we are live streaming to YouTube. So if you do want to ask a question, it will be on YouTube, just to pre-warn.
Thank you. My name, as you've heard, is Estlyn Mcfarquar. I am a Barbadian who was a British citizen, but then had to reapply and to become a British citizen again. I'm retired, and my previous occupation was I was a registered nurse and a registered midwife. I worked at Princess Anne Wing at the RUH for a total of, I forgot how many years, but all told, I worked for the NHS for 45 years until I retired in 2007. And for me, the rest of my history is up there with my name, and you have the great pleasure of reading it. Otherwise, that'll be another account. I'm here today to give a short talk about the struggles and the achievements and the contributions that the Windrush generation has made to this great city of Bath from 1948 to 1971 and up to present day. I'm not here speaking on behalf of any organisation or any political agenda, but from the experience, the lived experience, because what I'm telling you is lived experience of myself and other people that came here with the Windrush. Before I go on any further, many of you have heard of Windrush and you know that it's a ship. But lots of people, I'm sure, do not really know the history of Windrush. Now, Windrush was a ship built in Germany by the shipbuilders Hamburg, and it operated as a German shipping, by the German shipping line, Hamburg Süd. It was first used as Hitler's Strength Through Joy, as a cruise liner, and it was named the Monte Rose, transporting German migrants to America for their holidays. As you know, after the war, the Germans got more affluent, so obviously they had more money to go on holidays. At the outbreak of World War II, it was used as a training ship for naval cadets, and it was also used to transport Norwegian Jews from Poland to Auschwitz. And you know all about the concentration camp at Auschwitz. In 1945, the British troops took possession of the Monte Rose from Germany. And in 1947, it was originally registered as a British ship. Its first voyage was in 1948 under British ownership, and there it brought 1,270 passengers from the West Indian Islands. Now, people think that it's only this Windrush that brought people from the Caribbean. But in other fact, research shows that there's been 3-4 other ships that brought people here to Britain. One of the other ships that was involved was a ship called the SS Ormond that landed at Liverpool docks with 108 passengers. The Almanzora that landed in December at Southampton with 200 passengers. And then the SS Aguera that landed at Plymouth docks with 1,100 passengers. And I've gathered some more information that there was another ship called, oh Lord, I haven't written it down, I've forgotten it. But that took passengers from the West Indies to Tenerife, and then people then was transported via trains and what have you then to come to Britain. So when the Allegra brought the 1,100 passengers, these passengers came from Jamaica, Caracas, LaGuardia, and Barbados into Britain. In March 1954, the Windrush caught fire in the Mediterranean, and it was coming back from the Far East with 1,500 passengers, and they lost 4 members of the crew. And that is the short history of the Windrush that we keep hearing broadcasts all over the place, but I'm sure lots of people doesn't really know this information. Right. My next topic, because I've divided my talk into four topics. And the next one is we were invited. Now, following the period following the Second World War, in which people from the colonies in the West Indies now name collectively the Caribbean, because back in those days, the islands in the Caribbean, that's now called the Caribbean, was known as the West Indian Islands. And they were owned by the British, and we were British subjects. Hence, I have brought you my passport and my husband's passport. We were British because we were British colonized by the British. You have the, what I call it now, the British coat of arms in here, as you can see. And we were British, and we came. We were invited to come to Britain to help rebuild the mother country. We were always told by our colonial masters that Britain is our mother country. So when mother was in trouble, mother called to her children, and her children responded as any child does respond to its parent. Britain was offering prosperity through employment to her children, so to speak, to take up jobs that could not be filled by the British people. West Indians arriving during the period 1948 to 1973 was labeled the Windrush generation, because Windrush generation is a label that was put on our people by the British government. It's a label and a form of repeated slavery, but done in a more humane manner, allowing people to come with some possessions and some of their family. Many of these people were here in the First and Second World War. I can testify to one of my relatives that was here in the First World War. My paternal grandmother, her brother, came up to this country and fought here in the First World War. And he was never, ever heard about again. Nobody knew if he died or whatever happened to him. That family, my four parents' family, never knew what happened to him. So as I said to you all, what I'm saying is from lived experience. One of the other people that came here was a brother-in-law of mine. He came here and fought in the Second World War, my late husband's oldest brother. Fortunately, he went back to Jamaica and then traveled on to America and lived out his life in America. But this thing has happened to so many people. You know, the average host community doesn't take these things on board. These young men and women had roles when they came here to fight for Britain. They had roles in the Army and Navy, the ammunition depots and telecommunications, and various other institutions here to help Britain to win the war. Now, these people came here with skills. They weren't unskilled people, because if we look back at the generations where these young men and women were coming from, they had been developed, and they came here with skills as engineers, electricians, foundry workers, railway workers, mechanics employed in the manufacturing industry, building cars, vans, coaches, etc. They worked in telecommunications and the postal services. At the time, Clement Attlee was the Prime Minister and Ernest Bevin was the Foreign Secretary. And this was when Ernest Bevin introduced the National Health Service. Before I carry on any further, let me get here. Our struggles and in spite of our harsh and inferior treatment, are people encountered by the host community as a strong and resolute, proud people. We've battled through these injustices because, believe you me, our people has put up with some injustices within the country here by the host community. And we have made a better lives for ourselves, our extended families in the Caribbean, and the generations that followed us. Most of the following things you might have heard about with the struggles was a housing accommodation. People would go see a house advertised for rent, a room advertised for rent. You get there and they tell you no blacks, no Irish, and no dogs. Or the room's just gone and you go away and somebody goes along behind you and they rented this room. You know, we had appalling situations. You had people employed in wages, and because they look as though they were young boys and not men, they had a wage discrepancy and they weren't paid the correct wages for the work that they were doing, and they were grown adult men and women. We had all of this to contend with. The work environment, and as you see from various things portrayed from various programs on the television, the way that the host community treated our people in this country. But we had problems in the education, health and social care, and generalized racism, and that is just to name but a few. Inroads, achievements, our achievements here in the city of Bath. Inroads were made by the education system, in the education system in Bath, with a self-help supplementary school. And I was part of that self-help supplementary school. Because having had my daughter and sent her to school, I realized, being educated in Barbados, that there was a shortfall of what she should have known at her age. And a group of us, and this lady here, Mrs. Beryl Dixon, she was awarded an MBE by the late Queen Elizabeth for her services. Myself and her and a group of other women and men worked tirelessly here in this Bath to get where we've got our generation of children to be. And we made inroads so that our children, when they come out of school, they would have acquired the proper grades that they could apply to colleges and universities. And in so doing this, we've achieved here in this Bath city architects, barristers, journalists, TV presenters, pharmacists, university lecturers, teachers. The Rainbow Steel Band, I don't know if you all have heard of the Rainbow Steel Band. It is originally the group that originally came from Barbados and set up that steel band were Barbadian people. And they've gained, over the years, have gained international status. They play all over the world. They've gained international status here. We've got bus drivers, we've got worldwide musicians. That is from our generation. Olympic champions here in Bath. We've got an Olympic champion here in Bath that has been given the highest accolade that you can in Bath. He's been granted the freedom of the city. And again, as I said, Mrs. Beryl Dixon, the late Beryl Dixon, she was awarded an MBE from the Queen, the late Queen, for her services to the community. We've got a director, professor of the University of the West of England, a photographer, filmmaker, anthropologist, and an author. We got property owners here in Bath. We got business owners here in Bath. Care home owners, post-pastoral and pastors of local black churches in and around the community. We have worked. We have put into the Bath. We've put into the country. And from approximately 1954 onwards, the National Health Service began recruiting people to come into the National Health Service. And I am one of these people that was recruited here. And I didn't come on a Windrush. And there's thousands of people tarnished by this Windrush thing because it was from 1948 to 1973. So whatever mode of transport you came by, you are known as a Windrush generation. And at that time, when they started recruiting, they recruited people from what they called the New Commonwealth. And that New Commonwealth included now the Caribbean, the Philippines, Malaysia, Sri Lanka, and some of the African countries, Gambia, Nigeria, Kenya, Uganda. And they were recruited here as infrastructure for the health service and to replenish the nursing and doctorate staff that was lacking in this country. And I tell you, and I'm telling you from experience, that some of us were treated appallingly. In those early days, I cannot complain because when I came into this country, I had no family nor no one. I came with my friend. And we were well looked after because we came and we lived at what is now the Spa Hotel, and it was the Spa Nurses' Home. And we were looked after. But as we started coming out and circulating into the community, and we see what was going on with our people living in the community and the harsh treatment that they had, it generated a need for somebody to step forward and start to do something. And that is what Beryl, myself, Mcfarquar, and there was about 8 of us, we got together and we started a pressure group. And we seen the evidence of all the things that they were there, but we weren't part of it. Although we were part of the society and the community, we were never part of it. We were excluded. So therefore, we set about gathering evidence and going forth to, at that time they had Commission for Racial Equality, and we went up to London. We lobbied the MPs here in Bath and lobbied the Commission for Racial Equality in London. And we got funding to get a race equality officer here in Bath to help to address all of these various things that were missing. Well, that they weren't missing, that we had no access to. They weren't missing, they were there, but we as black people, we had no access to them. So there we go with that one. Now, from this nursing perspective, we've produced nurses, doctors, radiologists, physiotherapists, equalities and diversity officers, chaplains. We've also had input in other allied services in the health service, such as cooks, stroke chefs, domestic stroke housekeepers, clerks, porters, etc., you name it. People work in laboratories, all the areas of the health service. We've had people working in them. The migrants were transported then by aircraft, and their fares were paid by the government at that time from the 1954s. And when you started working, the salary was recouped on a monthly basis from your salary until it was repaid, which usually took about 2 years. Following this, my next topic is the scandal. I don't know if you've heard of the Windrush Scandal. Now, the Windrush Scandal. Firstly, who would you say are the Windrush generation? Could I put that to you? Who would you say is the Windrush generation?
From what you've said before, is that everybody falls within that time period, so
Yeah.
it's a large
Right.
amount of time.
And I say it's a label. And as I repeated before, it's a label imposed by the British government on the people that arrived here from the West Indies in the period 1948 to 1973. And we were British subjects, and as I showed you, we were British subjects. Somewhere there down the line, and in this passport, it quotes, and I'm quoting from this passport, the status of British citizens on all Commonwealth subjects and recognise their rights to settle in the UK and to bring their families with them. The scandal. The scandal surfaced in 2017 after it emerged that hundreds of Commonwealth citizens, mainly from the Windrush generation, were falsely deemed as illegal immigrants and undocumented migrants. And I will now show you how this happened. We came here as British citizens with a British passport, but then the immigration department and the government changed the nationality status. So us that here that came on this passport, that we're British, we had then to apply for British citizenship, right? And these are the documents that I've got from application in 1980 until I receive this, which is the certificate, the British nationality certificate, and this is what. This doesn't look like it is now because of age. This is what it looked like when I received it. And it took from 1980 to 1983 before I had that in my hand. It came through my door in the post from 1980. And as you can see, I am somebody who is very meticulous. I have all my documents, all my postage, all the letters, all of these letters to and fro from the Home Office in order to get that piece of paper from 1980 to 1983. And they're so clever. They send me a letter confirming that my citizenship has arrived. I got the letter in 83, but my citizenship, as you may see, is stamped in 1982. So where has it been for the last year? So now you can understand why so many people they've labeled as undocumented migrants, because you send your details up to the Home Office and they delete them or do whatever it is they want to do with them. And if you were, as I say, meticulous and seeking to find out on these papers, you didn't get it for free. It cost me £100 for myself and my husband for this piece of paper. Right? So there we go. Now we understand, or now I can get you to understand about the scandal. And I've lost my bits and pieces, sorry. Now, these people now that were labeled illegal immigrants and undocumented immigrants, right? They were wrongfully detained. Some were deported. They were denied legal rights. They came here and they worked, they bought their houses, they paid into a pension, they were denied their pensions. Medical services, they were denied. They were denied to go on holiday because they take this and they have no intention of giving you back. Some of these letters in here, I've wrote to the Home Office time and time again. The letters are in here to get my passport back to go on holiday. Lots of people wouldn't have bothered, but I bothered. And I persevere and I push. And like I tell you, it was 3 years. I was going away on holiday and I wanted my passport and I sent for the passport. Of course, the passport was now illegal, so I had to get a new passport. But at least I got it back so I could do the documents to get my new passport to go on holiday. But this is what happened to loads, hundreds, thousands of people in the Caribbean. Their driving license was taken away from them. You name it. Some of them were put in prison, taken out of their houses and put in prison. They done nothing wrong. You know, and this is all the treatment of the host community. Now, why did this Windrush happen? Why did this scandal happen? To enforce the immigration control, they aim to make the United Kingdom unlivable for what they call undocumented migrants, ultimately pushing them to leave. It was a hostile legislation policy, and it was announced in 2012. And the people that was tasked with this work was the NHS, landlords, the banks, employers, and many others to enforce the immigration control. Many of the Windrush generation came here on their parents' and grandparents' passports, and the Home Office destroyed thousands of landing cards and other documents, making it virtually impossible to prove that they were citizens in this country. And on here, on our poster, this man here, Leroy Desmond Allen, he was a victim of this. He and many others were victims. Unfortunately, he has sadly passed away. Eventually, how the scandal materialized. There was a journalist from the Guardian newspaper that got wind of it, and it was investigated and reported to the Caribbean leaders, and then they took up the task of investigating it. And at the time, Theresa May was the Prime Minister. Following that, have I lost a bit of my paper? Following that, it was then passed on to the new government here. And Savage Javid had an inquiry into the Home Office and the regulations going on in the Home Office. And he had a report back in 2012. And that report says that the scandal was something deliberate. It was set up as a deliberate thing so as to get the migrants, the so-called migrants that are British citizens, out of Britain. They had a team an inquiry into it, and there was 30 recommendations made. Some of these people, very few, a very small percentage, have had some compensation, but there are loads and hundreds of them that had never have any compensation, and there are many of them that has passed away. And therefore, we look now and we see that the present Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, she's abandoned the team. But these people will continue to fight until they have justice. They will continue to fight because it's, I don't know words to describe it, it's a damning insult to us. We came here in good faith, and now at the end, not my generation, the generation before me, but thank God my generation, because we were alert. The same thing could have happened here in Bath, but because we had people that were alert and looking out for each other, why a lot of it didn't happen to our Windrush generation, our people here within the city. And I have mixed my bits and pieces up, sorry. What I would just like to say is that one can see from what I've put forward to you all here today, how we as a people have come here and what we've done in Bath and within all over the country. It's benefited people all over the country, not in one area and not the other. And one of the things I look to is for the respect and the appreciation and to be valued as a city, as a person in the city, that we as our people should be part and parcel of the city and be treated with that respect. And I thank you. Has anybody got any questions?
Can we show pictures?
Yeah, oh yeah, I forgot about the pictures.
Here's the first one up on the screen. And we've got your selection of books as well now.
Okay, where are we? Where is it?
Just something.
Sorry,
That's okay.
I'm in the way. Now this is a collection of what I like to term black book, black history, because that is what it is, black history. And anybody that's interested, and you can get any of these and read it, it will take you back in time. Because black people, you know, the host community thinks that black people only came into Britain with this Windrush and with the war. But black people has been here in Britain since the 2nd and 3rd centuries AD. The first black people that were here was African soldiers in the Roman army before Britain colonized Africa. And there was a black emperor, a Roman emperor, called Septimus Severus. And he was in charge of the Roman soldiers. And they built Hadrian Wall. And they were stationed at Hadrian Wall. And the emperor lived in York. So it tells you how far back, how many generations back black people has been here in Britain. And these books here, if you want to know your history, read them. They will tell you the history and how they've always treated people of color. It doesn't matter what part of the world you come from and whatever you put in during the world wars or whatever, it does not matter. As far as they're concerned, it does not matter. You're here to serve a purpose. When that purpose is completed, off you go. We don't need you anymore. But we need you because no country can survive on its own. No country can survive on its own. Sorry, you can pass the other one. Now this book, I hope David Yugoslavia don't sue me. But anybody that's interested, you don't have to be black. If you're interested in history, this is one of the books I would recommend that every household that has children in it should have that book in their house and the children read it. Because you'll be a better person for knowing what is in that book. it would make you into a better person. So I hope, David Ogosavia, please do not sue me. I did not ask her permission.
I'm sure he'll be really happy.
I did not ask your permission. Also, one of the other things that is not part of my talk, but again, it highlights something else that we do here in Bath. For years now, on the annual day of Windrush, we always, Bath Ethnic Minority Senior Citizens Association, which is another organization that is very focal here within Bath. I used to be on the committee. I was there when it was set up, and I spent some years on it, and then I come off of the committee. But this year here, I've gone back onto it as an elder, and kind of like an advisor on it. And each year, we organize an annual celebration, celebrating the event of the Windrush. And we usually have it at Christchurch. And this is what we did this year, these posters. The other thing we do, that BEMSCA does, we hold a CARICOM service. You may think, well, what on earth is CARICOM? I've never heard of that. Well, CARICOM is a combination of, it was established in 1973, and it incorporates the whole of the Caribbean countries. You can have a look, if you want, in this book, and it tells you what CARICOM is all about. And it was their 50th anniversary this year, and we organized a service at Christchurch and did a celebration for our countries in the community and our peoples in the community. And this is the second year, because last year we did it, because what we used to do is the countries, Barbados, Jamaica, Trinidad, Guyana, we used to, when they're independent, we used to have separate services. But now we've amalgamated it all together, and last year we did it, was the first year, and then it was their 50th anniversary, and we repeated it again this year. You're free if you want to ask me any questions. I don't know if I can answer them, but I will try.
If you do, you can speak in this microphone for the live stream, please.
Yeah?
I just wanted to ask about, your experiences within the NHS, like when you first started working as a
Training.
Yeah. Yes, like what were your thoughts? How were you received by the staff
When
group?
I came, as I said, because I came to do nursing, to do training, we were received very warmly. And like I said, we had excellent accommodation because we were living in a hotel. But when you went out on the wards, during that time, what I would say is that because we were only a few, the host community didn't see us as a threat, but as numbers increase, then you were viewed as a threat. My experience, I experienced racism from the day I came here. But at the time, I grew up in a country that we didn't know anything about racism and race, this, that, and the other. People lived in unity and harmony with each other. And when we first went on to wards, because we came 2 weeks before the school started, the training school started, and we were put on a geriatric ward, just to observe and occasionally help with whatever. And the old folk, when you come, to feed them or do something, they'd say to you, just like you hear the expression, take your black hands off of me, that sort of thing. And, you think, okay, well, maybe they've never seen nobody black before, because you're coming into this space. And they might have, so you kind of dismiss it. But the one that I will never forget is My second placement on a gynecological ward, the junior sister on that ward, one morning after we had the report and work was dished out, and she looked at me and she said to me, "Go in the ward and work like a black." And I'd never forget it. Go into the ward and work like a black. And I never said a word to her. But every morning, the matron used to do a ward round on every ward. And she knew everybody's name. And as she finished her ward round, bold as I am, I suppose that's me, I went up to her and I said, "Matron Young, can I see you?" She says, Nurse Banfield, because that was my name before I was married. "Have you got a problem?" I said, "Yes." She says, "Come over to my office at whatever o'clock that she told me to come." And when the time was coming, I said to the sister, "I've got to go to see Matron Young." And off I walked out of the ward. And I went over to Matron Young, and we used to have what was a home sister, and she was very nice. She used to take care of you, especially the people that come from overseas. And when Matron Young was ready, Sister Phillips took me into her, and she said, Nurse Banfield, what can I do for you? What is the problem?" And I told her what the sister said to me. She went back out to Sister Phillips and she said, "Phone Ward 2 and ask Sister, whatever her name was, to come to my office immediately." And she brought her in that room there with me. And she made her apologize to me. And she said, "As long as you're working here, do not ever use such language to my overseas nurses." I didn't sit on it, and I didn't stay there and think, no. And that is how I have dealt with racism. I have encountered it, but I've dealt with it. I haven't sat there on it. I had problems with my daughter at school. I went, myself and my husband, we went and tackled it head on. If you don't tackle these things head on, they stay there and they fester. And the host community thinks, yes, we can get away with it, and we will get away with it, because they ain't going to do nothing.
Thank you so much for bringing all this information to us. Honestly, if it wasn't for Google and David Olusoga, I would know nothing about Black history. My personal experience of learning history at school was just appalling and so limited. So thank you for sharing it. It's really helpful to understand these things. I wanted to know if you think racism is worse nowadays, or better, or the same, or different.
I personally, lots of people, things has improved, yes. I'm not saying things has not improved, but racism itself hasn't really improved. Because you got children going to school now. Because I've got grandchildren, I got children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren. And you've got grandchildren going to school with their white counterparts, and you're still getting racism amongst the young people. So for me, I don't, going back, I think it was in the 90s or something, you had all of this race problem in football. It's still the same now, if not worse. So in a general context, things has improved, yes. We have moved on, but racism itself is still there. And until what I term the host community know the history, because I personally feel it's because of lack of history. That is my personal interpretation about it. That is the lack of your own history that you do not know, and also that the racism is passed on from generation to generation. My grandparents didn't like black people. Why should I like them? It is something that is recurring generation. It's a if one like to put a label on it and says it's like a generational curse. And what you get is, for want of a better expression, the elite. You know, and once you can't get anything removed from the top, because whatever is at the top filters down the bottom. It doesn't filter from the bottom up the top. And until you can get the top to acknowledge, because this is what the top layer does not do, acknowledge that there's racism. Are we ever going to be a better country where race is concerned? Because one of the things for me that I see when the abandon the Race Relations Act was to get race out of the equation. Because we've got equalities and diversity now, which replace the Race Relations Act. And what has it done? It has removed race out of the equation. But we're still here. We still have the same problems. Be it that we can address them a bit better. But we are still here. We're not going anywhere. And so I rest my case. Anybody, any more questions? Any more questions? I can't have delivered that well that there's no questions. No?
Okay, but thank you so much. You gave us so much information.
Thank you. Feel free to read all, the posters, and it'll enlighten you with a lot more information, as to things that we've achieved here in this Bath City. And I know, the presentation is about Bath, but, it's happened throughout the country. But this particular bit is about what happened here in Bath.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thanks very much for your attendance. And I hope I've triggered something for you.